Hi, good evening everyone. Welcome to yet another edition of Politically Correct, where we try and analyze the most important political developments across the country with none other than our in-house political expert, of course, our national political editor, DK Singh. And today we're going to be looking at the state of Andhra Pradesh. No guesses why. Of course, the state has crossed 1 lakh COVID numbers. And the question that we'll particularly be looking at, has Chief Minister Jagan Mohan Reddy actually failed his first particular test, that is the COVID management? We're live on Facebook as well as YouTube, so you can send us your questions, and there's also a WhatsApp number that's been shared on your screen, so you can also share your questions there. As we speak, sir, the state has already crossed 1 lakh cases in the past 24 hours, out of which 51 are active cases, even though the mortality rate continues to be relatively low. Why is this happening?
Okay, first of all, when we do politically correct, usually we pick up issues which are actually trending. I mean, from the political sphere, and I'm sure many of you may be watching Rajasthan development, but then we have already done 2 episodes on this, and third consecutive one, I mean, frankly, I was getting a bit tired of it. Although you can always shoot questions on Rajasthan if some of you wish to. Coming to Anisha, why she's sitting with me is, Andhra, I haven't been to Andhra Pradesh for the last at least 6 months. And once we start throwing bouncers at me, if at all, about what is happening on the ground, well, I may be pretty uncomfortable about the situation on the ground. She came back from Andhra Pradesh and Telangana just about a fortnight back, 2-3 weeks back, and she has traveled extensively in those states. So once we start throwing the bouncers at me, like a tail ender, I'll just change the strike and pass it on to her. So coming to the question, it's not just the numbers. Of course, Andhra Pradesh has become has come among the 4 top states. It's on the 4th position actually in terms of the number of cases, after Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu and Delhi. Although Karnataka also crossed that 1 lakh figure yesterday. But Andhra is a bit more than that. What is worrying there is the doubling rate and positivity rate in the past week or so. So overall positivity rate is just 6%. It's less than the national rate of 9% or 8.9% or something.
That's right.
But in Andhra, in the past week, the positivity rate that has been noted is about 14% or more than 14%. That is worrisome. And doubling rate is a little over 7 days. That's again worrisome. Mortality rate, as you said, case fatality rate is just about 1%, 1.06%, which is good. Overall cumulative positive rate of over 6% is not worrisome at all. State of health infrastructure is also good. But yeah, everybody is looking at this huge spike. Now, if you look at it on March the 12th, Andhra recorded the first case. 100 days from there, say on June 22nd, 23rd, Andhra just had about 10,000 cases.
Absolutely.
And I was just looking at the numbers. On the 9th of July, it was about 24,000. In the past 20 days, it has crossed 1 lakh, 1.02 lakh actually. More than 400% increase. That's very worrisome, and that's why we are here to discuss why it's happening. One reason that is cited by many experts in Andhra we have spoken to, and the government officials, is the large number of testing. Now, Andhra has a very healthy testing figure. It's over 31,000 per million. Now, if you look at the figures in neighboring Telangana, now overall number of cases, infections are just about 55,000 or so.
Absolutely.
But then that does not give you the real picture. Because in Telangana, the testing rate is just about 9,000 per million. Like barely 26-27% of what Andhra is doing. And the more you test, the more infections you'll get, and the better it is. Now, Andhra is doing, actually, it's one of the best states when we talk about testing. Now, lowest on the list is probably, you have done some story, I remember, but Bihar, UP, they are the lowest. In Bihar, the testing rate is just 3,700 per million. In UP, it's about 8,000 per million. Now, nationally, it's 12,500 or something. So, if you judge it with that yardstick, Andhra is doing very well. Delhi, of course, is on the top, like 51,000 per million. But then, you know, the numbers, there are many questions about the numbers because Delhi has gone for antigen test. So the number of tests is very high, but you know the pitfalls in those tests, like false negatives, false positives. So we don't know. So that actually brings down the numbers and positivity rate and everything, but that does not give you the real picture. In Andhra's case, most of the tests are being done through RT-PCR, which is kind of the gold standard for testing. And so 31,000 per million is a very healthy rate. And that's why probably we are seeing this spike. Another reason that the government officials are, and also epidemiologists they are citing is that, you know, after the lockdown, there has been a lot of movement. People coming to Hyderabad, going from Hyderabad to different, towns and cities in Andhra Pradesh.
Absolutely.
And that movement has actually caused this spread of infections.
Yeah, as I think I'd just like to add to that because there is a lot of travel that takes place from Hyderabad to various districts in Andhra Pradesh as well. So a lot of officials do attribute it to the people coming from high-risk states. I'll start taking some questions now before we move to other things. Our first viewer asked Raj Diora, is Jagan an overhyped dynast? That's something that I think even a question includes. We also talk about why this might be the failure of his first test. So I think if you could cumulatively answer this.
When it comes to COVID management, I won't call him a failure. He has been pretty good. So far, so good, I would say. Okay. But he has handled it very well. And as he claims, the state government is spending about 6.5 crores per day on tests, providing medical facilities and other things. I think only last week he actually launched about 1,000 ambulances, which will be traveling across the state.
Absolutely.
And as you wrote in one of the stories, like the village volunteer network
has been very aggressive.
So you have one volunteer which is actually in charge of about 50 households. So keeping track of any infections wherever it happens. So right from the policy perspective, where you go for heavy testing, to how you implement it on the ground in terms of providing health infrastructure. Now Andhra, I suppose has about 43,000 beds available, or 40,000 beds available.
Yes, that's what they started with. They were always prepared to deal.
And they have about 4,300 ICU beds and over 17,000 oxygen beds.
Yes.
So the health infrastructure seems to be ready as it is, as the number mounts. Coming to this question, why I call this his first test. Look, it has been about 14 months since he took over. He has been having a good run in the sense it's like his honeymoon period until the COVID struck. So what we have seen is he has gone around, dismantling what his predecessor did. In the process, what he is doing is he's kind of, scuttling things which were you could have a long-term impact on, say, investors' confidence. I mean, he is reversing policies of Chandrababu Naidu government.
Absolutely.
He is changing power purchase agreement. He wants those agreements to be reviewed. The land, for instance, if you have allotted land to some industries, he is cancelling that allotment. Lots of things he is doing, which you should not be. I mean, because change of regime in the state does not mean the change of those agreements. So investors are shaken. And Andhra's finances are in shambles. Now, state has a debt of about 3 lakh crore as it is. And the other day, the former finance minister said it could be over 6 lakh crores by 2024. Now, with that kind of finances, he has gone about distributing freebies. I mean, you have schemes for weavers, barbers, tailors. 30 lakh people are being given houses. In farmer's account, every farmer gets about 13,500 rupees per annum. Of course, that's part of it, that 6,000 per annum comes from PM Kisan Fund. But the rest is funded by the state government only.
Right.
So he is on a popularity drive which may not be sustainable for a long time. And that is why I'm saying COVID is the first crisis. Because after that, with that kind of finances, you cannot even manage those welfare schemes. Forget about making capital expenditures and other things.
Fair enough. Our next question from our viewers: shouldn't we wait for the entire situation to pan out before evaluating performance of different states? In the beginning, Kerala was the model state, then came Karnataka, which is now performing poorly, and a few weeks ago, even Andhra Pradesh was the model state.
Well, then we had Bhilwara model, we had the Agra model. Absolutely agree. I mean, I agree with you absolutely. So we are not making any judgment calls as yet. But what we are looking at is the government's effort. Are you fuzzing data, fuzzing figures as the Delhi government is doing, or West Bengal government is doing, or many other states are doing? Or
even
are you
neighbouring state of Telangana for that matter.
Or are you being transparent? Are you going for maximum number of tests and actually detect the extent of the crisis? And only then you will be able to address it. So we are going by the sincerity of the government and the kind of efforts the governments are putting. We are not making any judgmental call yet. You know, many CMs, they became kind of stars and they were managing it so well, and suddenly they came down, as he has just rightly pointed out.
Absolutely. Right. Although you touched upon this, this is a hypothetical question though. How differently would Chandrababu Naidu have handled the pandemic had he been the chief minister?
Difficult to say. Frankly, I wouldn't guess that, because Naidu's strong point has been the economic management. If you look at his tenure from 1995 to 2004, he built Hyderabad into an IT hub. Now, Jagan Reddy did not have that cushion. Jagan Reddy did not have Hyderabad. So his finances are very limited. In fact, last month there was delay by about 7 to 10 days in even paying salaries to the employees, government employees. So the kind of constraints Jagan is facing, Naidu was not facing earlier. I'm talking about his earlier avatar. Last 5 years, Naidu's focus was on building Amravati as a new capital. That plan has been totally scuttled by Jagan Reddy. But frankly, I won't make a guess, because Naidu never faced it, and none of the chief ministers ever faced this kind of public health crisis.
Right. I also want to ask you, Andhra Pradesh does not have a cluster like Hyderabad, yet we've seen a massive spike. You know, Telangana for the longest time was holding the presence of such clusters like Hyderabad responsible for the spike. Do you think do you think that there's another defense for Andhra Pradesh, because they don't have massive clusters
that was the defense earlier, but now it seems to be, I was reading a comment by one government official, that it's kind of community spread now.
Yeah.
Earlier, the government was blaming it on people coming from other states, people coming from other countries, but now you cannot say that.
Absolutely.
So even if you do not have a city like Hyderabad, which could be a cluster zone, once it spreads in rural areas,
absolutely,
it's very difficult to contain. And look at some of the districts. Look, Andhra has a population of 53 million, but has only 13 districts.
True.
Jagan is, of course, he's trying to make carve out more districts out of it. He wants to make 25 districts in 25 parliamentary constituencies. He is working on that. But these 13 districts are pretty huge. Like, look at East Godavari district. It may have a population of 5 million.
And it has maximum number of cases.
You are getting a lot of cases from there also.
Absolutely. Right. And as you rightly...
But then when you look at the high numbers, it's possibly because of the tests, I would say, because everybody is agreeing on that, right? From independent experts to government officials. And I have no reason to doubt that.
Right. And I think, as you rightly pointed out, that the demography of the state is such that there's so many rural areas where the testing is being conducted out proactively.
Look at the difference between Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. Now, Andhra Pradesh, with a 53 million population, has conducted 17 lakh tests so far. And Telangana's population may be a bit less. It's about 3.5 crores,
right.
37 million. It has conducted just 3 lakh tests, 3.5 lakh tests. Yeah. So there is a huge gap. So we cannot actually compare the numbers.
Right. There's Shomik Guha who's asking, will BJP use this opportunity to gain ground in Andhra Pradesh?
Not really. BJP was trying to get a foothold in alliance with the TDP. Now it's left on its own. Now BJP has just appointed a appointed its state unit president. Let's see what he does. But BJP is not a factor in Andhra Pradesh yet. In Telangana, yes, but not in Andhra Pradesh so far.
Right. There's someone else who's asking, how can Mr. Reddy improve the economy of the state, given that it's already trying its best to handle the COVID management?
First of all, he has to regain the confidence of the investors. If you go about cancelling contracts, reviewing those contracts, changing the, bringing out another tender by cancelling the contract, I mean, nobody will come to you because you want uniformity and sustainability in your policies. Notwithstanding which regime is there, notwithstanding the change of regime, any investor would look for that surety, which is definitely missing now. He has to start with that. So far we haven't, plus the way he is splurging money. Now he claims he has fulfilled 90% of his promises in his very first year. Now, welfare schemes that he announced and implemented in the first year, costing 43,000 crores. And he's still going about making new announcements. So if you're in a popularity contest, fine, as a politician you have to be. But then it has to be sustainable also. Because economy is in a mess. It's not just Andhra's problem, it's all over. But it becomes worse for Andhra because its finances were already in bad shape when Jagan Reddy took over.
Absolutely.
Now, this is like double whammy. So he has to start thinking on those lines now. He did raise some issues with the Prime Minister talking about how textile exports have been hit, how MSMEs have to be given incentives and some kind of stimulus package. I mean, he has been talking about this, but in terms of policies from his end, we haven't really seen much.
And I think this also answers a portion of the next question, in case you want to add anything to that, from Pavan Reddy, who asks, don't you think Jagan is focusing more on his identity politics than the future or development of his state?
Agree, actually. Look at his announcement of the creation of 3 capitals. Now, that's a mad, harebrained idea. Now, he is talking about decentralization of power. But look at the practical side. Forget about the investments that development of these capitals would take. Now, if you talk about Amravati, Chandrababu Naidu had wanted to build that as a global city.
Right.
There's a plan of about 1.2 lakh crore plan to actually develop the infrastructure, get investors in. You dismantle all that. You want to have 3 different capitals. And the heart of it is that, identity politics he is talking about. Now, Amravati region, for instance, is dominated by Kammas.
Yes.
TDP supporters. Here, Reddys, you go to Rayalaseema, you go to Kurnool. You have Reddys there. Then you go to Uttara Andhra, where you want executive capital, that is Visakhapatnam.
Right.
So you are trying to balance the demands of different regions, of different people, different communities. Otherwise, it's a harebrained idea because look at the distance between Visakhapatnam and Kurnool. Now, if a government official has to come from Visakhapatnam for a court hearing in Kurnool, he has to travel 800 kilometers. And if you are having an assembly session in, say, Amravati, which is going to be the legislative capital, it's about 370-400 kilometers from Vizag again.
Yeah.
So imagine all the ministers during the assembly sessions, all the ministers sitting in Amravati, and the entire government, machinery, all senior officials, everybody, sitting in Visakhapatnam, which will not happen because when assembly session is on, everybody will have to shift. Just imagine the time and distance you need to cover.
So that in itself creates quite.
So identity politics was definitely a part of this mad idea.
From day one. The next question is plasma therapy and other new treatments being tried in Andhra Pradesh proactively?
Anisha, now you have to tell us because you have traveled in Andhra Pradesh. You tell me how actively they are trying it.
Not really, actually. I think Delhi was once a place that was very proactive, followed by Maharashtra and Bengal. Andhra Pradesh, actually, from what I saw, does not have a dedicated plasma bank, for that matter. We have seen a couple of donors going ahead and asking for plasma, but we've only seen ministers as well as government officials actually come out and tweet and ask people and donors to come forward. So they haven't gone that big on it as yet, but I hear from some officials that there might be a plasma bank coming up in the near future. But so far they don't really have a dedicated thing, which is why you won't see as many people asking for it. But there are some people in the opposition also who've been using this way to sort of take a dig at the government and power, and they share their WhatsApp number in tweets saying that you can contact us and we'll help you get your donor.
And besides, plasma therapy is not a proven cure as yet.
Exactly, it's still experimental.
Yes.
Absolutely, that's true. I'll try and take the last couple of questions since we're already 15 minutes down. Mr. Gopi Krishnan Kailash is asking, in the end, every state will end up facing the COVID spread across its territory. Isn't this an eventuality? So why only focus on Andhra?
No, we are not focusing on Andhra otherwise, because we have seen a huge spike here. So we are just trying to explain why it's happening. And yes, eventually it will spread.
Yeah.
Nobody has been looking at this concept of herd immunity. But it will spread all over. How much are we able to contain it? Look, R0, for instance, the reproduction number.
Yes.
It's coming down nationally. In Andhra's case, it's a bit more. In nationally, it's like, R0 is like, if you are infected, one person, on an average, how many more persons can one person infect? That's R0.
Right.
So if R0 is below 1, that is one person will infect just less than 1, then you have been able to contain. Nationally, we are down to about 1.17 now.
Already, yes.
For Andhra, it's 1.36. So effort is how much we can contain it and bring R0 down below 1%, where we can manage it properly. But if state governments go about hiding figures, not testing, it will only spread.
And one more last question that I'd like to ask is, they're saying that should various states, not just Andhra, be looked upon only in terms of numbers when we look at the COVID management, or should the low mortality rate also be a significant aspect while judging a state's COVID management strategy?
It's a very significant aspect. That tells you two things. One is people are coming to the hospitals in time. Because earlier our mortality rate was high because people would be coming to the hospital, say in the last 3 days, 4 days, as some surveys showed. Because most of the fatality rate was because of people coming to the hospital at a time when they were already in serious condition. Within 24 hours they would collapse, or in the next couple of days they would collapse. So if you have proper health infrastructure, which people can avail themselves of, they reach there in time, and you give them the right treatment, mortality rate goes down. So that mortality rate is very significant that way.
And one more thing, because I think it's a significant question. They're saying in Andhra, we've seen various districts, even in Tirupati, which was now a containment zone, and Srikakulam, which has announced a lockdown. Some of these places did not have cases earlier, and we've seen a massive spike recently because a large number of people are stepping out. So is social distancing not being effectively carried out in Andhra Pradesh?
Again, I'll toss it up to you because you have traveled there. Tell me how people are maintaining social distancing.
Right. So I had traveled about 3 weeks ago. To be honest, when I compared it to Telangana, then I thought people were actually quite obedient. I didn't see too many people out on the roads. But from what I saw towards the last leg of my trip, I think that is a concern, and that's what I hear repeatedly from officials as well, that a lot of younger people end up stepping out. In fact, there have been repeated media reports about how a lot of wedding parties have actually been taking place in Andhra as well. And talking of Tirupati, there's a story that we actually did. It's one of the most popular religious places across the country. It reopened on 8th of June. Before that, there was of course no case. But now we've seen again a lot of cases coming from there because of course people are traveling from various states to this particular temple. We've also seen some of their priests test positive, and from what sources told us that they were planning to shut down the temple. But again, I think due to internal politics, it's been declared a containment zone, but it wasn't shut down.
And I believe law enforcement agencies have also been asked to be very strict. There was this unfortunate incident a few days back when a man was actually beaten up so much by the police for not wearing the mask that he died actually. He succumbed to his injuries. That was a very unfortunate incident, but that probably tells you how much pressure the law enforcement agencies have to enforce other, not just social distancing, but other safety measures. Actually.
Absolutely, and I would completely corroborate with that, because even in this case, there was a police report which said that it could be closed down, but I think internal politics too comes into the picture. And just to answer the second half of that question, as far as Srikakulam is concerned, it did not have any cases initially, but it's a place where a lot of migrants have been coming back. So no wonder there's been a spike off late, and a lot of measures, lockdown measures were introduced post that. Anything that you'd like to add?
Not really. If there are more questions, we can take.
Okay, since I think we'll take one more question. There's also a loyal viewer of yours from Gwalior who says, "Where have you been? Please be a little regular." So I think he's been following Politically Correct quite regularly every week. And I think this you've touched upon, but I'll wind up with this. Is the health infrastructure in the state sufficient to fight against COVID, since that's something that has shed light across the country mid-COVID?
Look, Andhra has always had a good health infrastructure. Now, Jagan Mohan's late father, Y.S. Reddy, he was a good friend of mine. And actually, let me tell you an anecdote. After 2009 elections, Lok Sabha elections, right after the election, Y.S.R. came to meet Sonia Gandhi, and after that I met him. I said, how many seats? He said, 33. I said, 33? Are you joking? Did you say that to Sonia Gandhi? Yeah, why are you surprised? On the day of the results, I was there for a shock. They got exactly 33. And after that, I traveled to Andhra. Actually, Jagan was having this fast unto death thing in Vijayawada. And he had called me over to show the kind of impact he was having on the people and how people loved him. While coming back, I decided to travel by road to Hyderabad. And I was going from one village to another. And the kind of a story you would hear, that health schemes that YSI had launched. Now, every village you would find many people who benefited out of this. And they would be eternally grateful to YSR for this. Jagan is probably reaping a bit of that goodwill for his kind of, political venture now. But village after village, you had stories of how people got hospitalization facilities free of cost and all those things. So health infrastructure has been good. And as I said at the beginning of our program, now even today there are about 40,000 beds available in Andhra Pradesh, and the government is trying to add 30,000 more. And there are enough number of ICU beds, oxygen beds. So health infrastructure so far looks, pretty geared up to meet the challenge.
And I think also spread out. They've not limited it to one particular city, say, as has been the case in many other, where the health infrastructure tends to be limited to the capital. They've spread it out across all districts from what we know. Right, thank you so much. Of course, that was today's edition for Politically Correct. For more such insights, you can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, as well as Telegram. Thanks for watching.